Stakeholders in the liquor industry are pushing for changes to the alcohol laws and the legal drinking age in South Africa. The Liquor Amendment Bill seeks to regulate alcohol consumption in the country. CEO of the Beer Association of South Africa, Charlene Louw, joins us now for more on that. Charlene, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Potential major shifts in South Africa's drinking laws. Could the legal drinking age change from 18 to 21, and what would that mean for South Africa and for the industry?
Thank you so much for having me. I don't believe this is draft legislation that we're going to see the light of day very soon or anytime soon. This is the draft Liquor Act, which suggests that the legal drinking age should be increased to 21. We've got to go back to what the Constitution already provides for, which is the age of majority, which is 18. And so there's a clear contradiction that this piece of draft legislation has with the Constitution itself. And so I do not see this piece of legislation actually moving further than what it has since 2018.
Yeah, well, I mean, seems the incoming Minister of Social Development, along with some organizations and some members of Parliament, are seemingly on the same page on raising the legal drinking age. Why do you believe it won't see the light of day if it manages really to pass through the processes of the National Assembly, the National Council of Provinces, and of course, eventually being introduced?
Well, it is a contradiction to the Constitution. Let's start there. So in of itself, that provision is unconstitutional. It's not a provision that actually can be enforced through secondary legislation. It would require constitutional change, which is another different process in of itself. So that's where the challenge lies with that provision. It also is not in keeping with what global trends are looking like. Most countries have settled on the legal drinking age being 18 years. And certainly South Africa is not going to see this change. Needless to say, you're going to find a situation where, regardless of whether you then increase the drinking age to 21, you are going to see 18-year-olds still consume alcohol. So that certainly isn't going to be a solution that is workable for the industry, as well as for those that at 18, they're adults and can make those decisions for themselves.
So according to a study by the DG Barry Trust, raising the legal drinking age could aid in reducing the rate of alcohol consumption by as much as 12%. It could contribute quite significantly to some of the alcohol-related accidents, fatalities, and other ills of society that we're dealing with in South Africa.
Look, I certainly don't want to comment too much on the stats and the veracity of the source of that particular data, but the industry has gone to lengths to do extensive research in terms of testing and ensuring that essentially those particular stats can be contradicted. And so what we can say, of course, from an industry perspective is that we, of course, do understand that there is an abuse of alcohol that is prevalent to a small extent within our country. I think we need to contextualize alcohol abuse and its impact. And so there's only a 30% of our society that actually does drink alcohol. That 30%, a smaller percentage of that particular percentage is that percentage that in fact abuses alcohol. And I think it's really about government as well as the industry working towards partnering together to find solutions that are innovative, that are sustainable, but certainly not trying to regulate the industry out of existence.
So part of those innovations, or at least interventions, would be imposing a 100-meter radius restriction on alcohol sales around educational and religious institutions, banning of alcohol sales and advertising on social and small media, introducing a liability clause for alcohol sellers, all forming part of this proposed change in terms of the Liquor Amendment Bill. What does industry say to that?
Industry, of course, is concerned. If you look at just the contribution of this industry to the country's GDP, it's in the region of 3.6%, over 200 billion that this particular industry contributes to the economy. Some of those restrictions essentially are going to see job losses, are going to see the country and government collect far less taxes. And so it really is not going to be a workable solution for government, not only just for the industry. In a country already that is struggling with joblessness, particularly youth unemployment, these are some of those things that this country cannot afford to see happen. Some of those restaurants, hotels, shall I say, retail outlets that sell alcohol are already within those radiuses of schools, of hospitals. They're hotels that are quite adjacent to schools, to hospitals. And so what that translates to, if this regulation is in fact pushed forward, is that these establishments will close. And the ripple effect, of course, is what I've just described, that this country, in fact, sees unintended consequences of job losses. And of course, we're going to see a lot of tourism decline because the tourism industry is enabled by these very establishments that this piece of draft legislation will, in fact, see come into extinction, essentially.
Charlene Louw, CEO of the Beer Association of Southern Africa. Minister Sisisi Toloshe, in a statement just last week, pointing out that alcohol is the most abused legal substance in the country, disproportionately affecting young people. Toloshe citing alarming statistics from the South African National Demographic and Health Survey, which revealed that 25% of the individuals aged 15 to 19 had already consumed alcohol. How do we then protect young people from that? Because it seems 25% of individuals between the ages of 15 already are beginning to consume alcohol.
Again, when it comes to some of these statistics, we've got to be very clear that the Honourable Minister is quoting statistics really that are from the survey that was conducted in 2016. And those statistics do not hold true in the context that we're in right now. And so what we would be, in fact, pleading with Stats SA in partnership with the Department of Health, who often works with them on these types of surveys, is to begin to update that particular survey so that when we speak as an industry and as government, we speak to data that is current, data that is factual, and data that can inform some of the interventions that both industry as well as government would want to put in place.
Yeah. What listening to the industry could say, you are not bringing in any supportive measures to address the question of alcohol abuse. I mean, how are you, for example, increasing your own messaging around the underage drinking and the importance of addressing that?
The industry has come together and formed various institutions that are there to solely handle the mandate of ensuring that there is education and awareness around underage drinking and just responsible consumption in general. You may have heard of organizations such as aware.org. Big alcoholic manufacturers themselves and producers are running programs and spending millions of rands on an annual basis on programs that run throughout the year to create education and awareness to not only their consumers, but to those traders that are in fact selling their product. Associations like ourselves are running programs, annual programs where we're going into primary schools, into high schools, into universities, and in fact teaching and educating some of these youngsters around some of the ills associated with the alcohol industry. Yeah. So the industry is playing its part. I do believe, yes, of course, there's more that can be done. But as I've indicated earlier, we do have a small percentage of alcohol abuse in our country that requires innovative solutions and solutions that are sustainable. And I think this type of regulation only seeks essentially to hamper and bring the alcohol economy down. And of course, a lot of times the unintended consequences are that we're going to see job losses. And I think we need to talk to government and engage with government in a different way to find solutions that are more lasting and sustainable in terms of alcohol and alcohol abuse.
I think that what's crucial here is really not the curtailing, I suppose, of the industry from selling product, but is the delaying of young people's access to alcohol for the sake of their health and their development. And if we could strike a balance between the two.
No, absolutely. I agree with you, and I think the industry wouldn't argue with that. That is why the programs that I've just described are in fact targeting youngsters that we already look at them from a young age and try and educate them around staying away from alcohol. In fact, using ambassadors to come into these schools that are model students, youngsters that are also essentially high-performing students to try and dissuade and mitigate some of the ills of alcohol that is seen and experienced within some schools in South Africa.
Yeah, looking at those stats and just from how you're responding to those stats, are you leaning towards saying South Africa is, as a country, is having an alcohol abuse crisis, or are you saying we are not there?
I don't believe we're there. Recent research speaks for itself. We only have a drinking population of 30% in our country. That certainly cannot be described as a crisis. And so an even smaller percentage of that 30% is abusing alcohol. And we need to partner to solve for the problem of that small percentage of alcohol drinkers that in fact abuse alcohol. But trying to regulate the industry, to not operate any longer or regulate it out of existence is certainly not going to solve the problem of those individuals that I think require the correct intervention to deal with the abuse.
Charlene Louw, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Charlene Louw, CEO of the Beer Association of South Africa. They're responding to the big changes being proposed to drinking laws in the country, which of course has been a long time coming, but the new social development minister seeming to have the impetus to engage with some of the stakeholders along those particular lines. Right, In Focus continues shortly.